Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that Brigham Young led nearly 70,000 pioneers across the American wilderness, built cities in the desert, established schools and universities, and guided a growing church for 30 years? Learn that Brigham was more than a pioneer leader and that he was a builder, a teacher, and a visionary man who was often called the American Moses.
Imagine for a second that you are tasked with moving the entire population of a mid-sized modern city.
Right, like a decent-sized place.
Yeah, let's say Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yeah.
So you have to move all of those people, but you aren't using trains or planes or a massive fleet of moving trucks.
Oh, and no paved roads either.
Exactly. You are moving them entirely on foot and by wagon across more than 1,000 miles of completely hostile wilderness.
And you're doing it with absolutely zero infrastructure. I mean, there are no supply chains waiting for you.
No gas stations.
Right. No maps detailing the highway system. And the stakes are, well, they're absolute. If you miscalculate the food or the pacing or even just the weather, the people following you don't just have a bad time, they literally die.
It is the absolute definition of high-stakes existential leadership. So if you're listening to this on your commute or sitting at your desk, just think about the sheer scale of that logistical nightmare.
It's hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is. And today, we often talk about startup founders building an empire because they launched an app and got a few rounds of venture capital.
Right, the modern version of an empire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today's deep dive is about Brigham Young, the second president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he was, in my mind, the ultimate bootstrap founder.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he didn't just build a software company, he built a literal civilization from the dirt up. Historians often call him the American Moses.
No, which is a heavy title.
It is. And our mission today is to get inside the head of a true kingdom builder. Using historical records and biographical excerpts, we want to figure out, how does a man with only 11 days of formal schooling orchestrate a massive exodus and establish a thriving society in a completely barren landscape?
Well, to understand the psychology of a leader who can carry the weight of, 70,000 pioneers, you cannot start with the man at the height of his power.
Right, you have to go back.
You have to look at the crucible that forged him. Because resilience on that scale, it's not an inherent trait. It is manufactured through severe, intense friction.
So where does that start for him?
So Brigham Young was born in 1801 up in Whittingham, Vermont. He was the 9th of 11 children.
Wow, 9 out of 11.
Yeah, big family. And his father was a farmer and a Revolutionary War veteran.
Which right away paints a picture of a deeply stern, highly disciplined environment.
Very austere. And there was no real stability either. By the time he was 3, the whole family had packed up and moved to New York.
Okay.
And then the foundation really cracks. He loses his mother when he's just 12 years old.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly young.
It is. And by 14, he's already working as a carpenter's apprentice. So he isn't sitting in a classroom theorizing about the world.
He's working with his hands.
Exactly. He's shaping wood, learning the literal physical mechanics of how structures are built from the ground up.
Which has to translate into how he later builds a society, right?
Yeah.
But I know there's a specific moment when he's 16 that really shifts things.
Yeah, that physical grounding is crucial, but the ultimate psychological pivot happens right then. His father essentially looks at him and delivers this ultimatum that would be completely unthinkable for a teenager today.
What does he say?
He says, "You can now have your time, go and provide for yourself."
Just like that. At 16.
Just like that. That was his launch into adulthood. Sink or swim, you are entirely on your own.
And the way Brigham recalled that specific moment later in life, it really tells you everything about his mindset.
Yeah.
He noted that a year hadn't even passed before he stopped running, jumping, wrestling, and the laying out of my strength for naught.
He literally boxed up his own childhood.
Yeah, playtime was officially over. He had to take absolute, unflinching responsibility for his own survival at an age when, most people today are still figuring out their basic identity.
Right, getting their driver's license.
Exactly. And that forced independence, it created a hyper-pragmatic, deeply hardened young man. He learned early that the world does not owe you comfort.
But here's the thing. A strictly pragmatic man doesn't build a kingdom.
Right, he just survives.
Exactly. He needed a different kind of fire to elevate him from just a survivor to a visionary. Which brings us to his spiritual awakening.
Okay, so how does that happen?
Well, he receives a copy of the Book of Mormon from Samuel Smith, who was the brother of Joseph Smith. And what really stands out about his conversion is how methodical it was.
He didn't just jump right in.
No, not at all. He doesn't just get swept up in emotional fervor. He applies the exact same carpenter's pragmatism to his faith. He studies it meticulously for 2 full years before making the decision to be baptized.
2 years of just analyzing it.
Yeah. And he's finally baptized on April 15th, 1832. But once that intellectual and spiritual threshold is crossed, the commitment is absolute.
The language he uses to describe his conversion is actually incredibly visceral. He said, I wanted to thunder and roar out the gospel to the nations. It burned in my bones like fire pent up.
Fire pent up. I love that.
Yeah, this was no longer just a belief system for him. It was a consuming biological drive.
And that drive gets tested almost immediately. He ends up marching to Missouri in Zion's camp with Joseph Smith.
And for you listening, we should clarify, Zion's camp wasn't just a tough hike or a weekend retreat.
Oh, no.
It was a grueling 900-mile expedition to help persecuted church members. It was a massive pressure cooker.
Because when you put people under that kind of extreme physical and psychological stress, marching through harsh territory, dealing with disease, supply shortages, you immediately see who shatters.
And who steps up to lead. He actually viewed that specific crucible as one of the most formative times of his life, didn't he?
He did. It prepared him for a lifetime of service because it permanently merged his physical endurance with his spiritual duty.
I do have to push back a little on the limits of that endurance, though. Okay, how so?
Because being determined is one thing, right? But pushing yourself to the absolute brink of self-destruction is another. Like, in 1839, he's called to serve a mission to Great Britain.
Right.
And according to the historical records, he is violently, gravely ill when it's time to leave. Yet he states, I was determined to go to England or to die trying. My firm resolve was that I would do what I was required to do in the gospel of life and salvation, or I would die trying to do it.
Yeah. That is intense.
I mean, that borders on fatalism.
Yeah.
Where does that specific brand of unbreakable, frankly terrifying willpower come from?
Well, it traces directly back to that 16-year-old boy whose father told him to go provide for himself. Brigham Young didn't view physical survival and spiritual duty as 2 separate columns on a spreadsheet.
Ah, I see.
His harsh childhood forged an operating system where giving up simply wasn't a recognized input. He viewed his survival and his faith as deeply intertwined necessities.
So no plan B. Exactly. When he committed to a course of action, whether it was building a chair, crossing an ocean, or leading a civilization, the only 2 acceptable outcomes in his mind were absolute success or death.
And it turns out that exact iron will was the only thing standing between his community and total annihilation just a few years later.
Right, because the ultimate crisis hits in 1844.
Following the martyrdom of the prophet Joseph Smith, the community is in absolute peril. They are facing intense, violent persecution.
The founder has been killed. The people are terrified.
And Brigham Young, acting as president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, has to step up to the helm.
And the magnitude of the task in front of him cannot be overstated. He has to supervise the harrowing 1,300-mile trek of the first Latter-day Saint pioneers.
From Nauvoo, Illinois, all the way to the Salt Lake Valley.
Yes.
Let's just pause and think about the logistics of moving 70,000 people. You aren't managing trained, conditioned soldiers here.
No, this is everyone.
You have toddlers crying in the back of wooden wagons. You have pregnant women. You have the elderly suffering from exposure.
You have to figure out how to stretch a single sack of flour to keep a family alive for another 100 miles.
And how to maintain morale when people are literally burying their children on the side of the trail. The administrative burden alone would break a modern CEO, let alone a man with less than 2 weeks of formal education.
But he managed it because he understood human organization, and he understood the stakes.
But the climax of this incredible exodus is his arrival in the Salt Lake Valley in 1847.
Right. And he arrives with the last group, and he is suffering terribly from Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
He's basically incapacitated.
He's so sick, he actually has to lie in the back of Wilford Woodruff's carriage. And they reach the mouth of the canyon. He looks out at this massive, completely barren valley, and he delivers that definitive statement.
This is the right place. Drive on.
Exactly.
That moment is wild because of the context of the valley itself. If you've never seen the Salt Lake Valley before modern irrigation, you have to realize it was not some lush green paradise waiting to welcome them.
Oh, not at all. It was a harsh, arid desert.
Jim Bridger, who was one of the most famous frontiersmen of the time, famously doubted that corn could even grow there. Yet Brigham Young had this complete, unwavering prophetic certainty about the location.
And he later explained their situation with this brilliant, very Carpenter-esque metaphor. He said they had been kicked out of the frying pan into the fire, out of the fire into the middle of the floor, and here we are, and here we will stay.
I love that.
Yeah, and he then declared, God has shown me that this is the spot to locate his people, and here's where they will prosper.
That middle of the floor analogy is so profound because it's hitting absolute rock bottom.
Yep.
You've been burned by the frying pan of persecution, burned by the fire of the mob, and now you are just lying on the bare, hard, unforgiving floor of a desert.
But instead of looking at that floor and giving up, he decides to build a skyscraper right there.
Exactly. Simply because God told him to.
Which is precisely why the historian Leonard J. Arrington called him a kingdom builder with dreams. He didn't just see a barren salt valley. He saw the finished product through the lens of his prophetic vision.
Where others saw a wasteland that couldn't even grow corn, he saw a blank canvas for a global civilization.
Right. He secures their physical survival in the desert, but physical survival is just baseline existence.
Yeah, to actually build a civilization, you have to decide what kind of minds will populate it.
Which brings us to a massive contradiction in his character.
A huge contradiction. Because if you look at his story so far right, a hardened pioneer who stopped playing at 16, who marched across the plains, who ruled his own body with iron willpower.
You would expect his society to be deeply austere.
Totally. You'd expect a joyless, hyper-rigid Sparta.
A culture focused entirely on work, survival, and solemn prayer, with absolutely zero room for frivolity.
But when we look at his actual philosophy during his 30 years as president of the church, and he was also the first governor of the Utah Territory, we see this completely unexpected, highly progressive champion for joy, expansion, and education.
Yeah, let's look at the education piece first. The man had 11 days of formal schooling.
11 days.
11 days. And most people with that kind of background, they distrust intellectualism.
They usually think it's a waste of time.
Right. But instead, he becomes an aggressive advocate for higher learning. He establishes the University of Deseret, which we know today as the University of Utah.
Wow.
And in 1875, he founds Brigham Young Academy, which is now Brigham Young University. He understood a fundamental rule of kingdom building. You cannot just build farms and houses, you have to build minds.
Because a society that only knows how to survive will eventually collapse.
Exactly.
It goes so much deeper than just formal education, though. His views on the arts and human joy are stunning considering his background.
Oh, the violin story.
Yes. He talked about how, until he was 11 years old, he had never even heard the enchanting tones of a violin. And when he finally did hear it, his puritanical upbringing was so strict that he actually thought he was on the highway to hell just for lingering and listening to the music.
That's heartbreaking, really.
It is. But he recognized the psychological damage of that extreme deprivation.
Because often, when leaders grow up deeply deprived of resources or joy, they project that trauma onto their followers. They mandate austerity for everyone else.
But Brigham Young actively broke that generational cycle. He explicitly stated that he would not subject his little children to such unnatural training.
You want them to go to the dance.
He wanted them to study music. He even wanted them to read novels.
Wait, really? Novels?
Yes. His stated goal was for them to do anything that would expand their frames, add fire to their spirits, improve their minds, and make them feel free and untrammeled in body and mind.
Free and untrammeled. That phrase is a masterpiece of leadership philosophy.
It really is.
Because he was deprived of art and childhood play and education, he used his ultimate authority to ensure that the civilization he was building would not suffer the same deprivations. He didn't just want his people to endure the desert. He wanted them to flourish in it.
You see that deep empathy in his parenting advice, too.
Oh, his parenting advice is fascinating.
He told parents never to get out of temper or get fretful with mischievous kids. He argued that those kids aren't bad. Their bones fairly ache with strength and vitality.
So he advised parents to sympathize with them and soothe them.
Right, and this is coming from the guy who was told at 16 to pack up and fend for himself. He completely redefined what childhood should look like in his kingdom.
He recognized that the raw, chaotic energy of youth is not a sin. It is the vitality and lifeblood of a new generation.
Absolutely.
And that expansive view of human potential explains his incredibly progressive stance on women's roles, which defies almost every stereotype of the 19th century frontier.
It really defies all logic for a patriarch in the 1800s to champion women in the professions. But if you view him strictly as a startup founder, optimizing his resources, it actually makes perfect sense.
Right. Necessity drives innovation.
He stated very clearly that women shouldn't just be confined to sweeping houses, washing dishes, and raising babies.
He instructed them to stand behind the counter, study law, study physics, which meant medicine back then, and become good bookkeepers.
Because he had a massive labor shortage in this new civilization.
Yeah.
He couldn't afford the luxury of 19th century sexism.
But his reasoning wasn't just economic, right? It was deeply theological.
Exactly. He said women should pursue these fields to enlarge their sphere of usefulness, and that by doing so, they answer the design of their creation.
He viewed the intellect and capability of women as an essential divine resource that society desperately needed. A true kingdom builder cannot leave half of his population's potential untapped.
He empowered them to build right alongside them men. But, expanding the mind, empowering the population, encouraging joy, those are beautiful, lofty ideals. But lofty ideals eventually have to beat the dirt.
They do.
You still have to ground that joy into the daily reality of hard work, physical survival, and how you treat your neighbors.
And one of the most pressing realities they faced was their relationship with the Native Americans who already inhabited the region.
Right.
The frontier in the 1800s was largely defined by violent retaliation. If livestock was stolen, the standard response was devastating, lethal force.
But Brigham Young instituted a massive paradigm shift. He gave specific instructions to the pioneers to treat the Indians with kindness and to completely refrain from harboring revengeful or vindictive feelings.
He commanded his people to feed them, clothe them, and teach them the art of husbandry.
And the absolute core of his policy was his emphatic statement to never consider their lives as an equivalent for petty stealing.
Which is huge for that era. He recognized a fundamental law of kingdom building. You simply cannot build a long-term civilization on short-term vengeance.
He was willing to absorb short-term economic losses, like stolen cattle, to buy long-term regional stability.
He explicitly valued human life over property, establishing a remarkably high ethical standard for his community.
And that ethical standard tied directly into his philosophy of daily labor, which might be the most fascinating part of his worldview for me.
How so?
Well, he believed that human happiness is deeply dependent on doing work and doing it well. He famously said that an idle life is a wretched life.
Right.
He said, our daily toil, however humble it may be, is our daily duty. And by doing it well, we make it a part of our daily worship.
He completely erased the boundary between the temporal and the spiritual. He believed the physical world was a canvas for spiritual perfection.
Yes.
He told the people, keep your valley pure, keep your towns as pure as you possibly can, keep your hearts pure.
It's like a mechanical watch. To him, the spiritual life wasn't the polished face of the watch, while the physical work was the hidden, dirty gears behind it.
Right.
They were the exact same gears. If you let the physical gear rust, if you are lazy in sweeping a floor or planting an orchard or studying a book, the spiritual watch stops ticking completely.
That is a perfect visualization. But he also understood the danger of overwinding that watch.
What do you mean?
Well, the same man who swore he would die trying in his youth, he later told his people, labor what you can consistently, but not so as to injure yourselves.
Wow, so that's growth and wisdom happening in real time.
Exactly. He realized you cannot build a sustainable civilization on burnout. You have to pace yourself to endure.
Because the ultimate goal wasn't just survival, it was beauty. He instructed them to build cities, make gardens, orchards, and vineyards. His vision was to render the earth so pleasant that angels may delight to come and visit your beautiful locations.
Gordon B. Hinckley, who was a later president of the church, he perfectly encapsulated this at Brigham Young's 200th birthday celebration back in 2001.
What did he say?
He noted that the prophet in Brigham shone brightest when he spoke of eternal possibilities, the plan of salvation, and the atonement. Brigham Young wasn't just moving dirt and planting trees. He was trying to create a physical environment that directly reflected the divine.
We've really gone on quite the journey today. We've explored how a rugged carpenter's apprentice from Vermont, a kid who had his childhood revoked at 16, became an American Moses.
Yeah, an incredible trajectory.
He didn't just lead tens of thousands of people across a hostile continent. He built a society rooted in purposeful work, expansive education, and a profound respect for human potential.
He took the bare floor of a desert valley and built a thriving culture.
Because he fundamentally believed that our humble daily toil has the power to attract the divine.
He proved that a kingdom isn't built with just bricks and mortar. It's built with the deliberate cultivation of minds, ethics, and environments.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. If Brigham Young believed that the way we work, the way we treat others, and the way we beautify our physical surroundings can literally make an environment so pleasant that angels would delight to visit it, what does the current state of your daily environment say about what you are trying to attract?
That's a great question.
Look at your physical workspace. Look at your digital spaces, the feeds you curate, the media you consume. Are the spaces you inhabit built to attract anxiety, noise, and vengeance?
Or are you building something better?
Exactly. Are you, in your own way, building a space designed to attract light and inspiration?
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.